The draft is coming up, and something's like in my head because I keep seeing it. Right?
It's bothering you.
Yeah, we do the daily mock at 1 o'clock every day. And there's a few times there's been a theme. And I get it. There's a million mock drafts out there, and everyone's trying to be different, so you're going to have something unique once in a while. But something's been in my head. I want to get to that in a second. First, though, let's listen to A.J. Brown, end of the season. He's on his podcast tour after the Super Bowl. What he said about the Eagles' offense and what they need to do in this upcoming season.
We don't know who's going to be the OC yet, but, definitely going to be some changes. We have to change. We just won. Everybody has the film on us.
Exactly.
So
Yeah.
we got to adapt, so we're not afraid of that. We've been doing that each and every year, but, this time it may have to be a little more drastically, but it's a part of the game. It's a part. That's what we do it for.
All right, so A.J. there, end of the season, said they have to change. They hire Kevin Patullo. I think there's a thought process here. They're probably going to throw the football more this year, maybe a little less of Saquon just because all the wear and tear last year. I get all that. But Hugh, twice in the last 2 weeks, 3 weeks, whatever it's been, we've done a daily mock, and the Eagles have selected in those mock drafts a wide receiver. First, it was Luther Burden out of Missouri, and then a couple days ago, we had the Matthew Golden wide receiver out of Texas. And I went home after the last one, and after, Al Davis Jr. over there, and you're saying, yeah, this will be awesome. It'll be cool. He's fast. And I'm saying to myself, yeah, these players might be good, but it's insane for the Eagles to draft a wide receiver. They just lost half the defense that won the Super Bowl. They have hundreds of millions of dollars invested in A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith. They don't throw the ball that much anyway, and they have a running game that is top of the league with Saquon and Jalen as part of it.
Mm-hmm.
I just think it would be crazy to draft a receiver in the first round. Now, could they use an upgrade on Dotson at some point? Sure. I mean, late third, fourth, fifth round, whatever. Get another young receiver. But first round, I would be upset if they drafted a wide receiver in the first round. Hugh, where would you come down if the mocks end up right and it ends up a wide receiver 2 weeks from now?
I would not be upset.
Mm-hmm.
Allow me to long talk just for a minute,
no.
Joe.
An 11 o'clock long talk?
Well, see, because this is
That's
where
late.
I feel.
I know. It's usually 10.
This is where I feel that I have to explain to people where my mind goes. Because a lot of times I feel like when we think about certain things and we hear certain things that any of our beloved sports teams do, we tend to do it with more emotion than actual logic. And the way that I look at it is this. Everything that you said is true as far as last year was concerned. When you talk about how the offense was anemic and it wasn't leading the way like I anticipated it to be the year before when we talked about averaging 30 or some odd points a game.
And to be clear, they were a good offense, but it was
but
the run
it was
base.
not. Yeah, it was a run-based offense.
The run base.
And you look at them going to get Jahan Dotson because they knew that they needed a third receiver, right? So Jahan Dotson was good in a small sampling size during the playoffs, but when you talk about one of these young receivers, a young receiver from Texas that you're talking about,
Golden, yeah, Matthew Golden,
4.29 in the slot, you're putting talent around your quarterback to allow him to spread his wings and be better. The defense led the way. I can't deny that. Cannot deny that, and I'm not trying to deny that. But I'm going to say it again, and I'm going to say it where people try to understand what I'm saying. Defense is a luxury, not a necessity. And I'm going to keep saying that because it's the truism. When you look at the number of snaps that are played by offensive and defensive players, on average, there are more offensive players getting way more snaps per individual than there are defensive players because they rotate those guys more and they're more expendable. That's why you talk about when Vic Fangio was talking about the guys that he lost, it's like he lost some starters and some rotation guys because they are the ones that rotate the most. When you talk about offensive players, offensive linemen don't come off the field. Quarterback doesn't come off the field. The receivers, for the most part, they have different packages, but A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith really don't come off the field a whole lot. So that's where all of your resources, that's where the tip of the spear, if you will, that's where all your resources are allocated to is that side of the ball. So I'm not upset or would be mad at the Eagles if they added more firepower to that offense.
See, it's that I get what you're saying, and I get the idea of adding more firepower. I just think it'd be a resource they don't use enough. Like, to me, they don't use the third receiver here, even if it's – they've had different ones, right? They had Quez Watkins with 2022. Last year was Jahan Dotson. It could be Matthew Golden, whoever they take in the first round this year. To me, they don't throw the ball. And I don't know if this is because he has A.J. and Devontae, if it's just Jalen Hurts and where he likes to throw the football. Since Jalen Hurts became the quarterback, there's been some years they've run it more. I would say 2021, 2022, 2024, they ran it a lot. 2023, they threw the ball more, right? 2 years ago, the defense wasn't as good. They threw the ball more out of necessity, and yet still, I'm going to look it up right now. The third wide receiver, how many targets that guy got? This is 2 years ago. That guy then was Zacchaeus, right? Olamide Zacchaeus.
He was pretty decent.
He had 20 targets the whole season.
Yeah.
They don't throw the ball to this player.
This guy, this is how I look at it, Joe. And walk with me a little bit when I describe this.
I'm walking.
Because when I look at defenses and I look at offenses, like offensively, like say if it's the Eagles defense that I played with, we matched up well against most offenses because we had three corners. We had Al Harris, we had Troy Vincent and Bobby Taylor, and we had Brian Dawkins, who was hella versatile, and Carlos Emmons, who could cover the tight end. Like you're talking about, as far as personnel goes, there's not too many teams that we matched up with that we couldn't cover in a man-to-man situation because of those 4 guys or 5 guys that I talked about right there. So now flip that to the offensive side of the ball. And when you talk about the Philadelphia Eagles, we already know A.J. Brown's a threat. And he has to, even if he has a quiet game, you're not about to leave him one-on-one. Then you talk about Schmitty in the receiving corps. And you have Saquon Barkley, who's a threat out of the backfield. Now, if you add another receiver in that is Matthew Golden kid that runs a 4-2, there's not too many teams that has a linebacker or a corner that's going to match up with a 4-2 slot in the slot position.
I get it. Look, they could get a good player there. I just don't think it makes sense for their team. I'm looking at their depth chart. They don't even have a backup to Moro Jomo at one of the defensive end spots.
No, yeah, they're gonna replenish the ranks with the young cats.
Right, but this is their biggest asset. We know they're not spending this offseason, right? That's come and gone. So their biggest asset to use this whole offseason is this first-round pick. And if they use that on offense, I just think, like, it's crazy. I mean, I don't know how else to say it. Right now, Tristan McCollum, Bryce Huff, and Moro Jomo are starters, and we want to get a third wide receiver when our top 2 guys are star players, and we don't even throw the ball to that guy.
Look at it like this. Okay, say, for instance, if the Eagles, drafting at 32, have a bunch of defensive players that they have earmarked at that position that they want, that warrant that pick. Because that's what we're talking about.
That pick, the 32nd pick.
What if all of those guys are gone that you feel warrant that pick at that position? What if they're all gone?
So you're saying the value is on the wide receiver?
Yes,
he's the best player
what if
on the board?
The value shifts? Because when you look at the draft board, Joe, you have the guys that you like that will probably be there where you're drafting, and you have guys slotted that are better. They might be better, might not be a position of need, but they're better than the guy that is left that might be the pick that you get at 32.
I'm going to give you a Hugh Douglas answer. You ready
What's
for this?
that?
They got to avoid this problem and trade up if they see that coming.
Now that might be the case.
Because I can see what you're saying. Like they have 6 guys they like, defensive tackles, ends, pass rushers, whatever, and they go 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, 31, and they're like, uh-oh.
And then here's the best receiver.
Matthew Golden, best player on the board.
Best player on the board right now. See, that's how you have to look at it.
I know, and in that case, then it might be logical. But I'm saying, Howie, you got to read the room, and you got to trade up for a defensive player.
Because think about it like this, and the reason why I want to use this as an example, because I was there, in Atlanta, and I remember when Terry Fontenot, he had the first pick, was it the first pick in the draft? When Matt Ryan was gone. No, the 4th pick. I'm sorry. The 4th pick. The 4th pick.
I know where you're going with this.
And I was on the air because that's the year that Trey Young, was it Trey Young? No, was it Justin Fields, the quarterback for Ohio State?
This is the 2021 NFL draft, I believe.
And I remember I was bullish because Matt Ryan had just left. Matt Ryan was leaving, and you had the 4th pick in the draft.
Yeah,
he went to Georgia first, and he was an Atlanta Falcons ball boy.
So the draft went Lawrence, Zach Wilson, Trey Lance, and then Atlanta was on the board.
Yes,
at 4.
And they picked Kyle Pitts.
Yeah, it was a terrible pick.
It was, and Kyle Pitts is a hell of a tight end. But guess what, people? He got a quarterback.
Well, they also passed on Jamar Chase and Penei Sewell and Patrick Surtain and Devontae Smith and Micah Parsons.
And I remember
terrible pick.
And then not only that, fast forward to this last draft. They went out and gave Kirk Cousins a ton of bread. And then they turned around and drafted a quarterback. And now they're sitting there with a backup quarterback that's making $100 million.
Sometimes you get stuck.
I mean, like, so you don't want to be – I say all that to say you don't want to put yourself in a bad spot.
No, I agree. You don't want to take a player just to take a player. Then that's maybe what that team did. All I know is I can't walk out of day one with a wide receiver in this defense that looks like it is, and I'm okay with it.
Can.
No, I can't. I can't. Maybe you can. All right, so I mean, go ahead. You're obviously all wide receivered up.
Well, a wise man once said that defense in the NFL
No, don't do it.
is a luxury
No!
and not a necessity.
Don't do it!
See, Kyle's starting to understand what I'm saying.
He's just drunk on wide receiver.
Not necessarily. I'm sort of messing with you, Hugh, because I totally disagree.
No,
at least with
the
the concept of what you're saying. But I'm resigned to the reality that this defense is not going to be as good as it was last season. It's not going to be number one carrier team to a Super Bowl win type of defense. I think it would fit the Eagles best, suit the Eagles best, to go into this draft with that number 32 pick, because like you said, it is the best asset they have this offseason.
Mm-hmm.
If they want to get an immediate contributor, I don't think that's along the defensive line. Those guys, I think, take a few years to get really integrated into a defense and flash. Like Nolan Smith took a while. Even Jalen Carter took a couple years. If they're trying to go win back-to-back Super Bowls, there's no position really they can draft on the defense that I think is going to impact the defense in a significant way, right, to propel them back up to number one. I think they need to double down on this offense. The offense, by necessity, needs to carry this team next season if they're going to be good. And I understand that the third wide receiver doesn't get too many targets. That's because Jahan Dotson sucks. Dallas Goedert, I mean, we see when he's in the offense, he gets targeted a lot. The Eagles are trying to get rid of him. So they're going to have a little bit of a hole in the middle of the field there. I think if they had this guy,
that's a fair point. Then maybe next year the third receiver takes the Goddard.
He'll matter
targets.
more.
Yeah,
and I don't trust Jahan Dotson to be that guy necessarily. So I think if they use that number 32 pick on a wide receiver who's runs a 4.29 or whatever, like that to me has more immediate impact on the team next season, where I'm trying to win back-to-back Super Bowls, than a guy who's going to rush the passer off the edge or a guy that's going to rush off the interior. I just think it's almost a luxury pick at 32 for me. They can go sign another veteran safety somewhere else to fill that role, and then they can draft a wide receiver who's going to add another dynamic element to the offense and maybe, put it over the top. Because, by the way, we can't even trust that Saquon Barkley's not going to have another 2,000 yards.
No, he's not going to run like that.
They're going to not only need to rely on their offense, they're going to need to rely on their passing offense.
Well, yeah, they could
to carry that.
and they do have two great receivers here. And you're allowed to draft a receiver in the fourth round that pops. I mean, look at some of the receivers last year. The McConkey kid. You could draft a receiver in the second, third, fourth round, and they play well. I'm not against another receiver. They could upgrade over Dotson. I'm fine with that. I'm against the first-round receiver. You guys have lost it.
I guess to me,
because I have vision.
Well, that's right. Hugh is a visionary.
I have vision.
You're on this guy's side on this. Do you realize how far you've fallen here with this?
Well, so look, I guess the way I think of it is, apparently it's a very deep defensive line and edge class, right?
So maybe get one of those guys later?
I do think the Eagles need to add to that position, replenish it a little bit. But if I'm already not banking on a guy to come in and contribute immediately along the defensive line, that's where I feel a little bit better about grabbing one in the second round or the third round, because he's going to need some time to come along anyway. Yeah. A wide receiver at 32 in the first round, I feel better about coming in and making an immediate impact.
Yeah, I get it. All right, 215-592-9494. I understand the arguments here from both these guys. I just think everyone here has lost their mind if we're drafting a receiver at 32. Can we hear from Ray Didinger? Can we hear from a true football guy? Ray Didinger on the Eagles' needs as we enter draft season here in Philadelphia.
What is your sense of the biggest area of need for this football team?
I would say edge rusher. Safety is, I would like to go get a safety too. And you obviously want to fortify your offensive line. And the good news is there's some good players there in all of those areas. So that's good. But I think edge rusher. I really do.
See, Ray Didinger gets it. We got to go get defensive line, edge, safety. We got to fortify the defense that we lost so much on. Not another wide receiver.
I was going to say something, but I don't feel like being laughed at right now because I'm being so
No,
serious.
please do.
No, go ahead.
By all means.
We won't laugh, we promise. We promise.
You should have saw the look I just gave Joe. We still got Bryce Huff. You can probably
Oh
work
my
out.
God! See, come on, man.
See, I'm not laughing.
Why do you have to do
I'm
this to
angry
me?
now. I'm angry.
When I take your side, you can't make me look like a fool
I'm angry.
with the Bryce Huff thing.
I'll take it so personal.
You're laughing at yourself. See, this is the problem.
It's because you're cutting our argument out from the legs.
No, listen.
When you had the Bryce
because
Huff
I'm trying to
Bryce
cover all
Huff.
angles. He's not a bust yet.
Oh my goodness!
I give him another season, man. He better be
Okay,
at
hold
no.
on. Did you
fine,
see
fine.
him in the team photo at the Super Bowl? He was the kid in class who didn't participate in the group project and got the
He
A.
was. You know what he was? He was that kid that had a whole bunch of late. He was not in school, missed attendance.
Yep.
But they're gonna let him graduate anyway.
And he knew deep down he didn't earn it. He knew it. All right.
I ain't supposed to be here.